Well, well. I've never seen anything like this. This inscription. This tome is from the Catacombs. I'm afraid I cannot accept this. This pyromancy tome is dark and delves into the depths of men where an untouchable flame resides. Heed my words, unkindled one. Fear the fire. The home of pyromancy, Izalith, was scorched by the very fire it created. Undoubtedly, it was a flame of chaos, tangled by a witch's hand. But no one knows where the truth begins or ends.
Hi, I'm Bob the Hollow, here to talk about the Catacombs of Carthus and the Demon Ruins. Stepping into the Catacombs feels like prying into a secret. Up to this point, the changing scenery had a continuity, a flow to it, but that flow was abruptly broken when we walked into this area. It has been buried not only by the earth, but by time itself. It's forgotten, and the people of the world of Dark Souls seem to have no knowledge of it. As such, it's natural that we would only find references to it inside its own halls. The clues are scarce, but I think we can scrape enough for a couple of theories. The first thing we have to acknowledge is that the Catacombs are not the Kingdom of Carthus. Carthus was called the Sand Kingdom, and its ruler, Wolnir, had conquered most kingdoms of his time. Well, the Catacombs don't look like a sand kingdom to me, but the surface seems to have large stretches of desert lying beyond the borders of Lothric. They share the same architecture as the Demon Ruins, so I think it's safe to assume that they were built by the demons and later repurposed by Carthus into a graveyard. And given the amount of skeletons piled all across the Catacombs, I'd say that they were marching with an entire army when Wolnir met his untimely fate below the Darkroot Garden. There is no record of Lothric clashing with Carthus, so it's likely that they were headed to honor Londo, and Wolnir, being a conqueror, would have it as his prize. They marched upon Darkroot Garden, and the way to honor Londo was blocked by two sets of doors. These doors were also built by the demons, and they both require a ritual to be opened. That second door, after Wolnir's fight, has the same engraving that looms above the arch leading into the old Demon King's quarters and is representative of the Bed of Chaos. The ritual that opens the first door is also interesting. Look at the panels behind the flames that you must put out. Nito, Queen's royal family, and the witches of Izalith. Snuffing out the flames of the old lords is very symbolic indeed. And the witches were included because, before their transformation, they themselves were members of the same caste. The demons don't revere what the Bed of Chaos had been, but what it had become. Carthus is known for its pyromancies, and pyromancies, of course, were born in Izalith. But their arts developed in isolation from other forms, so all of this must have been new to them, as foreign to their eyes as they would have been to ours. We know about the demons of Izalith and the primeval dark that lurked beneath Darkroot Garden, contained in the times of Ulasil, but they didn't. The host of warriors made its way through ancient ruins, unflinching, following the wake of their lord. Their next glorious battle lied in wait just beyond the stone door. A second ritual. Wolnir reached out to the goblet and fell into the abyss. Their lord was no more. Now, whenever you try to imagine this kingdom, I'd like you to remember that the reach of the undead curse seems to know no boundaries, and I would also like you to remember that it is directly linked to the linking of the first flame, appearing when the flame fades. But there are no references of the curse being a part of Carthus' history, so it must have existed at the peak of the cycle. It must have been a glorious place. That could also explain their apparent lack of religious belief. They had no miracles, and without the need to fear the curse, there was no need to appease the gods. The warriors lived for their High Lord, and Wolnir himself had never pleaded to the gods prior to his fall into the abyss. He does have a holy sword, but since it isn't curved, as was customary for Carthus, he probably found it inside the abyss along with the bodies of the clerics from whom he stripped his armlets. For all intents and purposes, the High Lord was the only god they needed, and this devotion to their leader is all we need to understand why the Catacombs are here. Wolnir didn't die, he was trapped in the abyss, and his warriors would wait for his return. But they weren't undead, and even without enemies, time would take its toll. The old man began as a squire, carrying his master's accoutrements. He ended his days a grave warden, and carried them still. And here, below the Catacombs, we finally talk about the demon ruins. Like the Catacombs, we need to place it properly within the world. This isn't Izalith per se, it lacks the scope, the structures and the depth. It's more like an extension, an outpost. And judging by the presence of Quelana, the Fair Lady and the Black Knights, I'd say that the demons were chased out of Izalith after the death of the Bat of Chaos. There might even be other outposts spread throughout the world, waiting to be discovered. And I believe that these ruins have been exposed twice to the Upside World, once to Wolnir's forces and much later to Irithyll. The giant ballista is a dead giveaway of Irithyll's presence. Next to the ballista is a hole in the cave wall from which we can see the moonlit sky, and the enslaved giants of Irithyll have brought the gigantic construct on Sullivan's behest. On a previous video, I have explained how the scholars of the Grand Archives had summoned the demons to Lothric, and this is how they gained access to them in the first place. Another link to Irithyll is the sacred flame pyromancy that can be found in this location. Remember this?
Oh, cleanse the bastard's curse.
Well, it looks like immolation from Dark Souls 2, but I think it's related to Sacred Flame, maybe a fusion of both. The evangelist's task was to send sacrifices to the Cathedral of the Deep, and the original purpose of Sacred Flame was to cleanse sacrifices. Another small note regarding this spell is that despite doing critical damage, it is not affected by the Hornet Ring, but it does receive the effects of both Aldrich Rings. One aspect of the ruins that had me puzzled for a while was the presence of the grooves. More specifically, the lack of grooves or dead grooves in the Catacombs. We know that they are former acolytes of the Undead Legion and that they came from the surface, but how could they get to the ruins without passing through the Catacombs? Well, the answer is simple, they did. Like I said before, Carthus must have existed in the peak of the cycle of the First Flame. They arrived here after the Abyss Watchers had linked it. The grooves could not fight Wolnir, so they ran away and some of them went underground. Chased through the Catacombs, they made their way into the ruins, where the warriors of the Saint Kingdom clashed with the demons. Their skeletons can be found right before the entrance to the ruins, and once they rise, they will fight the demon that is stationed there. The other warriors must have given up pursuit after the sandworm nested in the smoldering lake. The grooves were accepted and made the ruins their new home. They placed the swords of fallen demons on the ground, like they once did for the watchdogs. All of them warriors who had died defending their homeland. And at last, the demons themselves. I think we need to take a long, hard look at them. They are among the oldest enemies in the series. They are very iconic, from their appearance to their name, their home and their history. Everything screams evil. Something that must be fought, but have you ever asked yourself why? Why do we have to fight them? What have they done, besides being a dick in the asylum? We assume that they are evil because they are demons, and because the gods told us that they are. But the gods of Dark Souls have a history of persecution and manipulation. Just look at how they deal with the cursed undead. I found no signs of a demonic invasion on the surface. What we have seen are enslaved demons and black knights roaming their halls. It seems to me like Gwyn had taken the fight to them, primarily to destroy the demons, and later, when that failed, to ensure that they would stay confined to the underground realm, like the hollows at the asylum. Then, one day, a certain chosen undead invaded their home and killed their goddess, their mother, without even knowing why. Despite all odds they endured, they have developed their own architecture, art, and religion. They had a peaceful existence with the pyromancers of the Great Swamp and the Grus. They're alone, and they're dying, but not without a fight.